Hey, everybody. This episode of Our Kids Play Hockey is brought to you by our title sponsor, NHL Sense Arena. Look, we all want our kids to succeed in hockey, but let's face it, finding training that's both effective and enjoyable can be a real challenge, and not to mention expensive and a total drain on time, especially if you have to drive to the rink, pay a private instructor. There's so many reasons that money gets spent on this game. But that's where NHL Sense Arena steps in. It's a virtual reality training game that brings the rink into your home that takes off-ice training to a new reality. It's designed to improve hockey sense and IQ, something that's lacking majorly in the game today for both players and goalies. And you get unlimited access to over 100 drills and training plans from top coaches and players that can be played anytime, anywhere, with drills approved by USA Hockey player and goalie development directors. Look, improving mental hockey skills at home has really never been more fun, and any hockey player that uses this is going to have a blast. All right. I've used this before on my own, and it feels like you're so immersed in an arena, you sometimes forget you have a headset on. And again, it's not being on the ice, but it allows you to work on some of these skill sets like scanning, as I said before, hockey IQ, looking around the rink, making the right plays, that getting those repetitions in now as a hockey player are super important for your development. So NHL Sense Arena is giving all the listeners an exclusive offer for $50 off an annual plan when you use our code Hockey Never Stops at checkout. Again, that's Hockey Never Stops. All you got to do is go to hockey.sensearena.com. Again, that's hockey.sensearena.com. Use the code Hockey Never Stops, and you'll save $50 on your annual plan of NHL Sense Arena. Make sure to check that out and enjoy this episode of Our Kids Play Hockey. Hey, everybody. Got a great mailbag episode today. We got an email from a listener of the show that was asking about how to bring the fun back to hockey at a AAA or top tier level when your kid might be struggling or going through those emotional changes of, I'm not getting recruited and this is happening. When your kid's hurt, you hurt. So we really dive into this today, and we really unpack it from a player, from a coach, from a parent type point of view, and some of it's pretty harsh in a good way, if you know what I'm trying to say. So make sure you listen ahead on this one. I also want to remind you, if you love our show and you find value in it, please give us that 5-star review on Apple or Spotify or wherever you listen, and make sure to share it with friends. We're trying to grow that community that we've built so far, and you guys are unbelievable as an audience. The amount of emails and messages we get about just things like, hey, I never knew somebody else had felt that way, just means a ton to us. So the more you share it, the more the community grows. The more the community grows, the more we can get these great messages out there and really help to make the hockey community a better place for everybody. So yeah, share it, like it, follow it, whatever you need to do. And also, as a reminder, you can email us at team at ourkidsplayhockey.com. Or we have a Facebook group where the conversation continues after the episode sometimes. It's just Our Kids Play Hockey. So without further ado, enjoy this episode where Mike, Christy, and I unpack this email. It's a good one. Enjoy it. Hello, hockey friends and families around the world, and welcome to another edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. I'm Lee Elias. I'm joined, as always, by my best friends in the world, Mike Benelli, Christy Casciano Burns. We're here for you. We've got a great topic today. User, listener, follower-generated topic. Got it in an email. I'm going to start off the episode by just reading it to you, and we're going to dive right in, because this one's all about finding the fun again, especially when you're playing at the elite levels. Here's the email. Again, the names have been removed to protect the innocent. Hello, everyone. I was wondering if there's a way to restore the fun that Tier 1 hockey politics have seemed to taken away. Our son used to love the game to where we were ruining jeans and playing knee hockey every night in the living room. He couldn't get enough of it. Now that he's made it to AAA, the politics have seemed to make the game no longer fun to play. He's now constantly playing in fear of being benched for making a mistake during a game. It's to the point that he almost is dreading playing now. How do we save him and restore the love of the game instead of how will I survive in the hockey world of scouts that aren't contacting me like my teammates? Thanks for the advice in advance. So, hey, first off, great email. Thank you for sending it over to us. We actually put this in our chat between the four of us, Mike, Christy, and Caitlin and I, and started having a discussion right away. I was like, whoa. Let's save this for an episode. We got to do an episode about this. But Mike, I'm going to throw it to you first, because this is something I think a lot of parents feel and fear. And we hear it a lot that, at the highest levels, that the pressure is on. And it can really torment, in some cases, kids. In other cases, it can completely make them go to the next echelon. So where do you want to even start on unpacking this? Because I think it's a really fair question.
Yeah, well, so I think it's, coming from the perspective of somebody who's built crazy AAA programs and somebody who's kind of, I don't want to say reformed, but have seen the damage it could do to parents and players and families and relationships. It just, and this is not just hockey, by the way. This is every sport has this problem where it seems like the higher the level, whether it's 8U AAA or 18U AAA or elite or whatever you want to call it, that we have so many of these programs now that people get drawn to. And the same, if we're drawn to them, if we as parents are drawn to these programs for our kids without asking our kids, like without really getting our kids feedback and the understanding of what this is going to be, that's just like everything else, right? You're opening it up to the interpretation of the player. And I think a lot of us say, well, I don't care what the player thinks. This is what's best for them. So I'm going to put them in this situation. And now when they're miserable, really the only person you can blame is yourself. So I'm not blaming the writer, but I can almost 90% sure that any program that a kid's in that's having a problem like this, you knew about the program prior to signing up for the program. So most of the time, these are not like, oh my God, it's a revelation. I can't believe that it's no longer fun. And we've done episodes on this before where do your research. It's not going to be fun. But it depends on what your child's definition of fun is.
Right.
We've all heard the stories lately of, Connor Bedard, the Canadian superstar. His parents are going to Hawaii when he was like, I don't know, 9 years old or something. And he demanded, well, if I'm going to Hawaii, I need to bring my rollerblades and my stick. Right. And that's just a crazy, like, that's not a normal kid. That's an elite minded kid that has his own goals and expectations. That's not mom and dad saying, hey, we're going to pack your rollerblades and you have to go work out.
Right.
So that's the difference. And I think and so I think in the short answer is, we all know the programs we're signing up for. Buyer beware. Don't be surprised that in December, your child is unhappy, miserable, not wanting to go to the rink anymore because the pressure's too great or the expectations are too high on a program you knew was going to be that way when you signed up for it.
I agree. You really got to do your homework. You got to do your research. You got to prepare your kid. We're signing up for a very disciplined team, a well-disciplined team. No nonsense. And if you want to be a part of that, you have to change your mindset too. It's not like last year's team, where was a lot of fun, a lot of goofing around. The coach didn't care if you were late. It's okay if you missed a game. This is a different arena, and make it clear to them that that's what they're getting into. And if they're okay with it, then you can't complain in the mid-season with, hey, mom and dad, what do you mean we're not going to, screw around this practice? No, we don't do that in this level. You really have to prepare your kid for what they're in for.
The ironic thing is the teams that have the most fun and have the best, times together are usually the ones that are the most successful anyway. So, it's a lot of it's like, okay, you chose to go to a program that doesn't have their expectations straight, but you knew that. But the stark reality is the coaches that know how to put kids together in groups that they can succeed by having fun, by supporting each other, by creating a competitive environment, but a fun environment, an environment where you want to come to the rink every day, an environment where you can't wait to explore the new things you're going to learn. Those are the best programs that succeed. Not, AAA elite hockey doesn't have to equal your life is over and you have to commit everything you do to this program. But you do have to understand that what happens is, as that pyramid gets smaller and smaller in your community, and the AAA team is here and the rec team is here, this team's going to have more people that have a different mindset than the people that think that just goofing around and having fun is not okay. And again, I would argue that if you created a more fun environment, you would get more kids to play at a higher level. But we're just
not all teams are made equal, right?
No.
And that's where the
there's a reason. Right.
Well, and again, well, I think we got to break this one down a little bit too, because there's three aspects here. And keeping in mind, to the person that wrote this email, we're not talking directly to you. We're talking very broadly at this time.
Right.
There's a lot of unknowns in these situations, and you got to break it down to three things, and that's coaching, players, and parents. All right. And all three of these things have to kind of work together to create that fun environment. If even one of them is off, and then again, in the case of this email, we're not there. We don't know which one this is. Right. It will throw the whole thing off. You can have great parents and great kids and bad coaches. It's not going to be fun. You can have great coaches, great kids, bad parents. It's not going to be fun. And if the kids are not good, it's not going to be fun for anyone. Right. So I think that we got to kind of break it down to those three things. And, starting with the coaching staff, I think, Mike, you just addressed that. It's on us to make sure that the game is fun, that we figure out good fun practices. And that if it's going to be at a AAA competitive level, there are still ways to make that fun. Now, with that said, at the AAA level, fun is, and I'm just using the email as a reference here, not ripping jeans on the floor. That is fun when you're a younger kid and it's just recreational in terms of the nature of the game. Fun at a AAA level is working your butt off and competing with the kid next to you to try and get more pull-ups or to try and do better on the ice. That was fun for me when I played. I enjoyed that. Now, with that said, I can totally see why that would not be fun for every kid. Now, again, in the case of email, maybe this kid is very competitive, right? Which brings me to this. All right, this is the kind of main point I want to make on this episode, which we've talked about before, right? Not every season. This doesn't matter who you are. Not every season is going to be perfect. I have had, I'd say, half of my youth seasons were, I don't want to say downers, but they weren't the best. I'll put it that way, right? I have a bottom half and a top half. But what I do remember is being coached from my parents on, okay, it's not that great. What are you going to do? How are you going to take accountability with these issues that you have to overcome them? Because it was about more than hockey. And again, the email references scouts and elite people and watching. As a parent, I think it's on me. And again, look, a kid's a separate whole human being. They're going to look at things differently. But I think as a parent, as the leader, as the mentor, it's, look, no matter what happens in your hockey career, I don't define my love for you or how I value you based on how many people are watching you. It's, are you a good person? Are you doing the very best you can? When we're done with this experience, will you be able to look back, even if you get benched every game, saying that you did everything you possibly could mentally and physically to achieve the goal you were pursuing? To me, that's more valuable than any scout giving you a scholarship. And again, there might be people out there that disagree with me on this, and that's okay. That's the whole purpose of the show. But I think it's about taking accountability, taking the adversity head on. I think that when we break the scenario down, I'm throwing this back to you two now, tell me how getting benched and not getting ice time is any different than having a really rough boss at a job, right? Or having a professor in college that's just not on your side. These are things that your kids are going to face. So I think as a parent, your ability to look at those things, compartmentalize them, see what the real issue is okay, maybe my kid, or maybe my kid has a hard time dealing with adversity, or maybe he's great with adversity and this coach really does suck. It's a teaching moment for you as the parent. So that's kind of my answer to the email. I'm not trying to sound harsh. We all love our kids. I really don't think anybody listening to the show doesn't love their kids more than anything on the planet. You wouldn't be here if that wasn't the case. You'd be listening to Spit and Chicklets. Oh, anyway, I'm gonna throw it back to you guys. I know. That was a total joke. But yeah, I'll throw it back to you guys now because that's my first train of thought, and then you break it down to the hockey after that.
Yeah,
I think I look at the one thing that you said earlier, about that I always try to tell that to kids, right? That, well, you know what fun is? Fun's winning. And you know how you win? Well, you work hard and you learn and you
Right.
develop and you do. But at the same time, the teams that you start hearing, after a season, right after a winning season, you find out, well, you know what the most fun was? We did this paintball event where blah blah blah, or hey, we did this thing where we all broke into the rink and skated at 2:00. There's all, it depends on the age, right? But knee hockey for an elite hockey team should be fun, can be fun.
Totally
If you're in now, I don't personally agree with it. I think it's just bad judgment for parents having your kids at 11:30 at night playing knee hockey in a hotel where people are paying $400 a night. But that being said, I think you find they're having fun. they're bonding. And I think what happens is everybody keeps equating elite and development to not having fun. And it's so weird to me because I think the more fun you're having and the more competition there is, and the more you can build that internal drive is fun. And the kids can find ways to make it fun in the competition. Now, if your son or daughter doesn't find that fun and they don't find competition stimulating, then they're probably not truly going to be an elite athlete anyway.
Great
So
point, Mike.
I think we all, and I think this the whole idea that it's like, oh, this person's getting scouting and this person's not. Listen, the adage from the day I started coaching and playing to today is the exact same. If you are good enough, they will find you. That's the bottom line. No scout. And again, we it's a little hard because we don't know the age of the player here.
Right.
But if this is 15U, there's no scout looking at you anyway. There just isn't. Now maybe they're up in maybe they're in the OHL. Maybe they're in a place where there's a Bantam scout or something, like a Bantam draft or whatever. But for the most of us, nobody's getting scouted at 12 years old and 13 years old and 14 years old. They're just not. And the ones that are, and it's just like when you get letters, and Chris, you probably experienced this too with your daughter, right? Everybody, they're 16, 17, 18 years old, and they're all getting letters from colleges and prep schools. And it's all like, oh, guess who wrote me a letter? Oh, yeah. You mean the form letter they send out? Yes, that one.
It does make you feel special.
It does make you feel special. Oh, my God. NYU just sent my son a letter. This is unbelievable. I like this. But I think it's part of the business. It's part of everyone. They throw out the big net and then they kind of see who's there. The special kids are the special kids. The rest of us we're just players. And the scouts will find you. Nobody's going to miss you if you're good enough. And maybe you don't get a chance here. You don't get a chance there. But in my experience, it all evens out in the end. And the kids that are going to be found are found. The kids that are found out, too early, one of the expressions I try to use with the young guys that I train is it's always it's great to be seen, right? It's great to be, it's great to be seen, but sometimes it's bad to be seen too much. Like, don't rush to be seen for everything. Just be seen at the right time, not all the time. And I think it's just, I think it's just at that age, at 13, 14, 15, 16 years old, sometimes it's just about, sneak in on the scene and don't worry about what your teammates are doing. That has nothing to do with you. Right. All you can do is control you.
Great advice. Concentrate on your development, getting better, getting faster, doing some off ice training too. That's going to help develop your core. There's all things you can do at that age, 13, 14, 15, to start developing your skills as a skater, and then you'll get seen. But I do want to mention that, and I forgot about this. So AAA teams, we had a tournament in Cleveland, and the coaches didn't plan any tours or fun activities, but all of us parents took it upon ourselves to schedule in a trip to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for the kids. Wow, that was so fun. I mean, they were getting kind of beat up on the ice with these teams from these elite teams from across the nation, but it kind of all melted away when we were out wandering around the streets of Cleveland and checking out the food and restaurants and
living life.
Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So that made it fun. So there are things that parents can do, even if your kid's playing AAA, to make it fun and memorable for the kids, even if it's very rigorous on the ice during, practices and games. There are things you can do to help the kids bond and have some fun.
Christy, you're bringing up a funny point that's reminding me. I always like to make myself a little vulnerable on these shows. And, my wife, who's the yin to my yang, I love very much, look up to her. I remember, both my kids are in the game now. And I remember she came up to me the other day and she's like, can we just do something else aside from hockey?
Yes.
And it's funny because for me, I could do this all the time. I could do it 24/7 and be completely happy. I love the game that much. But she is so right in that you've got to do something else aside from hockey. All right. And the thing is, for everybody listening, Some of you relate to this, some of you won't. That's incredibly hard for me. I mean, I love my family more than anything, but I love the game a lot. All right. And I want to be around it all the time, but it is so important that you take a break. And I remember like we did this a few weeks ago. We went to like a Christmas market during the holidays. And it's a groaner for me when I think about it, but I'm glad I did it. It wasn't bad. We had a good time. We did stuff as a family, you know, we got out chocolate. And it's like, I just was like, you know, thank God she's around to remind me to do that. Now, to be fair to me, there is the other side of this where we do more hockey that she needs to be there more, but that's a topic for another time. But
you buy Christmas ornaments?
Yeah, you know, I got a Dwayne the Rock Johnson
hockey Christmas ornament.
Christmas ornament.
I didn't buy that one. Actually, somebody else did. But no, I got a Dwayne the Rock Johnson, a Sonic the Hedgehog. But no, Christy, you're right. Like on these trips, and again, look, the coaches are focused on the hockey, and probably not wrongly so. You're in Ohio, you're somewhere. There's stuff to do. We've all probably gone to Lake Placid if you're on the East Coast, right? If all you did was go to the rink and back to your hotel, and you didn't go skating on the lake if it was that time of year, or you didn't go check out some of the other stuff around town. And that's not a glamorous town, right? There's stuff to do though, right?
Stuff, places to eat, you know, memorabilia.
We went to the Olympic Museum. We were the only family in the Olympic Museum. Like we're in the Olympic Village. I said, what? Where else are you going to go? You can't go to the bar, you know, the whole time. But I think it all, you know, it comes. And that's where, again, elite hockey doesn't necessarily mean no fun.
Right.
And it means it. And actually, the ironic thing is when you see these elite teams, and if you're one of these people on these teams, you probably have more money than the other hockey kit families. Right. And you probably can do these other experiences. I mean, I see our elite teams in our area. Every time you turn on social media, they're at a Boston College game, or they're at Notre Dame, or they went to a Detroit Red Wings game when they were in town. Like the whole team, not just like one kid, like 25 kids in the stands. So they're not just there for hockey. But I also do think that, you know, and we can talk about this, and we've talked about this already, but you know, throwing the elite label on anybody that's not playing pro hockey is wrong anyway. In my opinion, there are no elite 8-year-olds. They don't exist.
It's all development.
They don't exist. And I think we by throwing that on there, we put the pressure on our kids and our families, right? Because mom and dad are part of that pressure. They're like, they have to go to work and they got to look at their their cubicle mate and be like, oh, did your kid make the elite team? No, he's playing he's playing rock hockey. He's playing rock hockey. but that's not that should but the whole idea here is our children should be just loving whatever level they're at. And then you as a parent, sometimes you have to be like, okay, the reality is I want to play knee hockey. He wants to play all the time. He wants to get and experience other things. Then I gotta tone it down to the team we put him on, even though he might be in the mix for that level.
Right.
You got to remember who your child is, and say, because the kids don't really care. I don't care who you are. I have not yet met a child that's like, I'm quitting hockey because you're not letting me play on that team. Then I'm gonna quit hockey, and it's amazing how kids find friends so quickly in these environments, no matter what level you put them at. There's very few kids that thumb their nose at the team they're on. It just doesn't happen very often. And if it does, then that's a you problem. But more of it is whatever team your kid is on, let them flourish, let them develop, let their own personality come out, and then let them find their own level. And if they're really that good, somebody's going to keep pushing them to get up and move up. But my experience is more about, okay, who can afford to move up and who will pay to move up, and those are the kids that we're going to move up.
So great points, Mike. And there's two parts of this email we got that I actually want to break down specifically now with the time that we have left. So I'm going to read a sentence or two from the email, and then I want us to dive in. And again, there's two specifically that kind of, I don't want to say they were alarming, but they made me think a little bit. This sentence right now: he is now constantly playing in fear of being benched for making a mistake during a game. So let's break that down a little more than just hockey. Okay. A fear of failure is an extremely common issue amongst humans. It's not just hockey players or young kids, right? Now, I'll say when you're younger, it's a lot harder. Some ways, in some ways, it's not, right? But to the person writing this email, I think you have to address head on as a parent the fear of failure, and that if you're playing in fear of failing, you are going to fail. All right. And that I know that's hard for a teenager to hear, and they might not respond well to it. But here's the thing about kids: they may not respond, but they hear you. And you got to remember that a lot of the stuff that they don't respond to or push you off when they're 25, they heard you. They'll remember it and they'll apply it. It's just like coaching any level. You got to tell these kids sometimes a drill 15 times before they get it. As a parent, yeah, look, you cannot play in fear of failure. All right. It is not successful in anything. You can't live in fear of failure. Now, you're going to probably ask, well, how do I do that? You have to stop seeing failure as failure, right? What do I mean by that? Making mistakes is part of life, but you can learn. So if you're getting benched in a game, hopefully the coach is giving you very clear communication of this is why you're getting benched. Then the question comes back to accountability again. What are you doing to work on that? And are you excited to work on that? I was just talking with a friend of mine before this podcast about John Tortorella and the Philadelphia Flyers, and he was telling me, because he works with a lot of pro players, that there's a lot of high-level talent players that like John Tortorella because he's so black and white. He will say, you are being benched because you did this. Now, think about this from a job perspective, because at the NHL, it's a job. Your boss has just said to you, I need you to fix this. He's given you clear, concise, this is what I need you to do. You will not be on the team per se until you do it. You can't get any better than that. Now, he throws compliments like sledgehammers. I'll give him that. All right. He's not going to make you feel good. He's not there to empathize with you. Again, we're talking about the most elite level there is, but you need to know the issue so you can work on it. And that working on it, as Kobe Bryant said, is the dream. That's actually the dream, is getting to do it. So I just wanted to bring that up, is that your son or daughter has a fear of failure. And I understand it. I did too at that age. So the mentorship has to be there of, listen, you can't play in fear. You have to control what you can control. You have to be as present as possible. You know, there's that great talk that one time that person said that if you're skiing, you don't look at the trees, because if you're looking at the trees, you're going to hit a tree. You look at the path. And I'm hoping, and again, maybe the coach hasn't done this, that someone's given you the path, right? Then you got to follow it, right? But you can't fear failure. I'll throw that to you two now.
Yeah, you can't be afraid to try. Good life lessons there too, because adversity, as you know, can be our greatest teacher. You learn from your mistakes. I remember when I was just starting out figure skating, I was really good at it, but I was so afraid of falling. And my coach came over and he said, "You're really hesitant. You know, you're very trepid when you're skating. What's going on with you?" I said, "I'm afraid of falling." He goes, "It's okay. Fall. That's good. You need to fall. That's how you learn." And then you're gonna pick yourself back up and keep going. So yeah, I think we can all identify with that young man. We're all afraid of failing and not succeeding at what we want to do. But you have to keep pushing yourself. Yeah.
I mean, it's the first thing you teach to every learn to skate kid.
Okay, fall down.
Go ahead, fall. We want you to fall. Let's fall as many times as possible. And you know, fall on your butt. Just don't fall on your head. You know, fall on your knees. Don't fall on your head. You know, it's just a matter of learning how to fall. I mean, that's one of the core principles of teaching skating, is teaching players how to fall. You know, and how to get up. That's the whole idea of sport. You know, fall, get up, fall, get up, fall, get up. Punch somebody in the face, get up. You know, it's just like, this is what sport is. But I think going back to the other piece of this, you know, of the fear of failure and the fear that every time they make a bad play and a shift. Again, not to be harsh, you knew the coach when you signed up for the team. I have not seen yet in 30 something years or whatever it is, 40, whatever it is. Oh my God, that coach is like, where'd he come from? Like, I can't believe all of a sudden in December, he was screaming and yelling at the kids and went into the locker room and told them how embarrassed he was by them, or it just doesn't happen. So you signed up for that environment. Period. End. You signed up. So don't come back and be surprised that your kid's not reacting well in that situation. You signed up for it. So now, can to Lee's point, can we say, well, we can teach you, because that's going to happen in the real world. I can't protect you from that, right? As a parent later on in life. So can I teach you the tools and techniques that you can do to work through that? But
Right.
your job as a parent of a 6-year-old, 12-year-old, 15-year-old is to guide them and not put them in those situations. So if you did it and you signed up and you knew the coach and you thought, well, yes, he does that for the crappy players, the players that don't play well, but that's not my kid. And then that is your kid. That's your problem.
You know, Mike, I'm going to bring up another great point you're making here. I think this is a great discussion. I got a few notes here. So I think you're right about, the coach, right? What I don't think happens is prior to the season, I'm not sure what conversations are having, parents and kids are having surrounding that situation. And I'm a believer that if you ask great questions, you will get great answers, or at least great conversation. So as a parent, and now I'm talking broadly again, it's not enough just to go, this coach is hard, right? Yeah, I know, Dad. Okay. That's not a great conversation. That's not a great question. A great question is, there's a good chance during this season, if you don't succeed, you're going to get benched. How are you going to deal with that if it happens?
Right.
Now you've planted a seed of, okay, wow, this could happen. And your kid might go, I'm afraid of that. Good. Now we're talking about it. Now we're in it. Now we're having a conversation. How do you think it would feel if you got benched? Now you can really attack, probably not the best word, but dive into a conversation with your kid about, yeah, you know what, when you fail, it's okay. Here's another part of this is that, and Mike, you brought this up. We're always okay when babies are learning to walk that they fall down 100 times. Somewhere down the line, we kind of forget that that's part of life. It's not, you're learning to walk all the time in a lot of different things. And somewhere down the line, it's just not acceptable if you don't know how to walk in 10 minutes. And that's on all of us. So this is just a human trait that kind of gets passed down, right? So we got to be patient with our progress. I think that's a really important part of this. I always joke on this show that at puberty, all bets are off. Man, your kid might grow 5 inches and be a completely better player than everybody on the team if he's the tallest or not, right? So you got to give your permission to have progress. Here's the other thing too, and this one's to all parents. And again, I'm just throwing this out there as a question. How have you dealt with your kids' tests at school? Are you the parent that needs 100%, or is 92% okay if they're still doing that? All right. I remember my son came home and my wife handled this beautifully, and he didn't do well on a pretest. He was really upset. He has a lot of anxiety over this stuff. And he's just about to be 9. And I remember my wife said this so brilliantly. She goes, it's pretest, it's practice. You're supposed to mess up. She completely calmed him down with that. You're supposed to mess up right now. What a great lesson she taught him. You're not supposed to do great on the pretest. That's why you have the pretest, right? So how many pretests are we having in life? And then I remember too, this other one for me was my mother. I remember when I went to college and then grad school, my mother used to say, I used to annoy the hell out of me. This is the point I'm trying to make to parents. Like, your kid might not really respond well, but I heard her. She goes, this is not high school. This is college. And you better be ready for college. My mom's literally calling me as I said this, by the way. I'm going to call her back in a few minutes. But then she said, this is graduate school. This is not college. Right. And at the time I was really taken aback, but what was she doing? She was preparing me mentally of, you need to attack this the right way. And I'll tell you what, I took the challenge on. I might not have said that to her, but like, yeah, I took this as a challenge. You don't think I can do this? You know what I mean? So she knew it, like Mike, to your point, she knew what it was. She understood I was going to go into something that's probably a little different than I had done in the past. And she mentally helped me prepare for the rigors and the potential outcomes of that. So if he's dreading hockey, that's what the email says, is dreading hockey. We're going to get into that in a minute too. Maybe we're not approaching it correctly from all fronts, coaching, parenting, and kids. Like, let's rethink it. Let's ask great questions to get great answers and not just live in it. I'll throw that back to you guys.
Right. And you could always consider a less pressured team where he or she could develop their skills a little bit more freely and make mistakes and learn how to be more creative, because you're going to have more playing time. Right. So I don't think there's any harm in, taking a kid out of a program after the season ends and says, okay, that didn't really work. You didn't grow. You didn't learn anything. You were afraid to play. Let's try a more fun environment, a team where you have a little more creativity. Let's give it a break and see where you're at. And
Christy,
then if you know what I'm saying?
what
Yeah.
happens? It's a great suggestion.
Yeah.
What do you say to the parent that says to that, I failed if I did that? That's a failure.
How did you fail?
Well,
You're listening to your kid.
right.
You're
But
looking
see,
at the best interest of your player.
and this is my point. And this is why I love you, Christy, because
Yeah.
you're seeing this through these eyes that a lot of hockey parents I don't think do, right?
Yeah.
It's not a failure
Yeah.
if it's not working. It's
Right.
a pivot, right? You're trying something else.
Yeah.
Right. But
that's
I
like
think,
that's like the Seinfeld, right? You're trying to make donuts, and then you're all of a sudden you find, oh, you know what, the actual donut holes are really
Right.
the way I have to go.
Right.
So I failed at this. I didn't fail. I just learned, and I pivoted, and I said, okay, I took the lesson. So I do like both sides of that. That if you are in that situation, you have to almost step back and say, okay, this is cool. This is a great challenge for us, you, me, the family. Let's figure out and strategize every day that you can walk into the building and have a positive experience. And if not a positive experience, a learning experience. And then you can change the narrative of your child. Now, it could be, I understand it's probably a little different with an 8-year-old than it might be with a 15-year-old. But there's no reason why you can't. You're smart people. We're parents. You're supposed to be smarter than your kids at certain times in their lives. Figure out a way to help manage that bad situation, because you can think ahead and say, hey, this is probably going to happen. And then when it does happen, what are you going to do? Just like we would want all our kids to do, right? You talked a little bit about body language, right? That what's going to happen. So you can either react to it and show your reaction. Players don't get as much feedback on this as goalies. Like if I'm recruiting a goalie, like I'm watching their body language. Like a goalie that slouches or his head's up, or he can't, like every single goal, it's like a drama. I'm like, well, this person's not processing this very well. Right. It's the kid that's intimidating to me, is like the kid that gets scored on. He just gets back in the pipes and he's ready to go. He's like, exactly. like the goal didn't even get scored. Yeah. And that's to me, but that's learned. That doesn't happen. That's totally a learned behavior. That's somebody that's coached into that and said, this doesn't bother me. Or, it's the makeup of this child. Yeah. So you could create the makeup of that kid by how you're coaching them at home, and then how you can strategize. Now, would like the ideal scenario be that you're doing this with the coach? Mm-hmm. Yes, but we don't have that luxury all the time. Not all coaches are trained that way. Frankly, there's not a lot of great coaches. If you're really lucky if you find a great coach. It's the normal knucklehead that's coaching our kids because they've got this kind of reputation for winning, only because they're able to keep the best kids and call out the kids that they don't have to teach. Like, honestly, like, they're better recruiters than they are coaches. So in our situation, it's just like in this scenario we're talking about, that parent and all of us can now go into each session strategizing as to what's going to be the issue, because I know it is going to be. How are we going to respond to it? And what are the lessons you're going to take out of it, so that we can now talk about it? Maybe that's the car ride home talk. It's like, hey, this came up in the locker room. How'd you deal with it? And don't you feel better about the fact that you're controlling your emotions now than somebody else dictating your emotions? And I think these are all great learning experiences. Again, depending on the age of the kid, but you can do this with a 7 and 8 year old, because 7 and 8 year olds that are miserable. Who wants to see that? Right. Like, as a parent, it kills you, right? It bothers you more than maybe the kid. So
if you have a 7 or 8 year old that's not enjoying the game, you might want to think about playing another game.
I say this all the time with coaches. I mean, in our coaching program, like, if you're a coach that doesn't, like, if you're a coach that's miserable at practice because your kids suck, don't coach. Like, imagine, like, this is supposed to be the most fun part of the day, is going to coaching these kids. So if you're already miserable when you get there, and your demeanor's miserable, and and your ego is miserable, and you're just not a happy person to be there, then please don't coach. Just don't do it, because you make the rest of us look bad.
It reminded me of the coach I had that took the first 10 minutes of practice to tell us how bad his job was. I had a coach like that one time, and I just remember
Well,
not
we
caring. Yeah.
we had one coach. We had one guy that was kind of, I don't want to say I was mentoring him, but he was coaching with me, and I was like, oh, listen, I'm going to put my ego aside, and I'm going to let you do as much coaching as you can. And like his first conversations would be like, okay, don't worry about yesterday's game. I know we got blown out. Forget about that. Put that behind you. Don't worry about getting killed yesterday. I'm like, half these kids they didn't even remember.
Right.
They didn't even remember getting killed yesterday, and now you just reminded them. So it's just like okay, so there's a lot of listen. Coaching is a science. It's an art. There's no, I'm not saying that for any other reason, but they're good coaches that take it seriously, know how to coach. They now they do it perfectly every time. No, you brought up a John Tortorella. Is he everybody's cup of tea? No, but I'll tell you right now, there's a lot more players that love him than hate him.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of people that love that. And again, even at the pro level, players for in a lot of ways have a choice to go play for that guy, right? If there's a free agency, you might not go there. I mean, money doesn't speak to these guys the same way, right? If they say, well, I want to go play for this person, and you can create that your own environment. So I think at the youngest levels, you have the choice. You're the one that writes the checks. You have more choice than you think. I think.
I absolutely, and that brings us actually to the next part of this, which I think is a great segue. The email said, I want to reiterate this. How do we save him? Pay attention to language here, and again, and to the person who wrote this, I'm doing this on purpose. How do we save him and restore the love of the game instead of how will I survive in the hockey world of scouts that aren't contacting me like my teammates? So I'm going to be a little harsh now. All right. The hockey world is not the world. And it's really important that we remind our kids that I know it's their world, but you have to remind them that that is not the world, and that you really should not identify as only a hockey player, because that's only going to be what you see, and you're going to judge everything on a lot of things you can't control. All right. So yes, you are a hockey player, but I think as parents, and again, your kid will fight you on this. I'm fully admitting that, but it's important to say there's a big world out there beyond hockey, and you're part of that. And it's great that you play hockey. You are a hockey player, but that's not who you are. Who you are is how you respond to some of these things that we're dealing with in hockey. Right. And again, I always say this. I never tell kids. I don't recommend you tell kids. You say things, oh, you'll never make the NHL. No one's gonna make. Don't tell your kids that. Don't ruin their dream. I really bugs me when I hear coaches or parents say, we're never gonna make that league. Just don't say it. Okay. But even NHL players have to have a life after hockey. All right. So to the person who wrote this, it's an identity thing. Your kid is probably very upset because they identify solely as a hockey player. Help them work through that part of it. This game does not define who you are. Getting benched does not define who you are. Your kid, your friends getting contacted by colleges doesn't define who you are. What defines who you are is how you respond, the type of human being that you're going to be. You're a great son. You're a great daughter. I love you. Don't underestimate saying these things to your kids. And again, to the person who wrote this, I don't know if you do that or not. I'm just talking broadly right now. The other thing is, how do we save him and restore the love of the game? It's a very curious comment that you feel he needs to be saved. Right now, you might be saying, "Oh, that's just how I wrote it." No, you wrote it that way. All right, the love of the game has very little to do with how you play the game. I know it sounds crazy when I first say it. The love of the game is something you have. You love it because you watch it, you play it, you read it, you do stuff, right? No one can take that from you unless you let them. That's where you got to tell your kid, you're in control of that. You're in control of how you experience this game. Mike Christie made great points. You knew you were in these situations. So I understand that sometimes the game's not fun. Okay, I'm going to say this again. Some seasons suck, and sometimes it's not fun. That's life. That is life. You can apply that to anyone here listening to your life. But still love the game. Sometimes parenting is not. Sometimes my kids suck. Still love them. All right. You know what I mean? Like, so you got to take a broader approach. I think when you get into that kind of just the what's it called? The blinders of hockey and what you're supposed to do, you got to take those off for a second. Like there's a whole world. The life lessons alone your kid's getting right now. through this adversity are invaluable. And how you both kind of go forward through this adversity, which is hard and it sucks. And I'm with you on that. I've been there. All right. But how you push through it together, that bond as parent and child, it's worth more than any NHL contract you're going to ever find, just to put it back to that level again. So I don't think your kid needs to be saved. I'm going to say that pretty point blank. I think their perspective needs to be changed, right? I think you have to understand that I wouldn't worry about what's happening with his teammates. I know he might or she might. You as the parent, right? There's bigger things in the world than that. You're not defined by a college scholarship. You're not defined by a college scholarship or who you play for. You're defined by how you live your life. And I don't think you can remind your kids who will not respond to that well enough, because it's when they're 20 and they get that, or 25 or 30 or whatever, that's when this pays off. It's so hard to see that. Throw it back to you guys.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to watch your kid hurting if he's having a crummy season and he's, not the star player and maybe he's falling behind. That is tough. But you do have to let them understand that hockey is not who they are. It doesn't define them. It's just something they do. If they're not having fun, if it's really wrecking them, then maybe you got to rethink it. Maybe you have to find a team that's better suited for them, or, work through it and just say, you know what, we're going to get whatever you learn from this team, it's going to make you better. You got to separate it. You got to teach them how to separate, compartmentalize their emotions, and they'll be better for it. If they can just plow through. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, the saving statement, I don't know. Like, this would be a great conversation to actually have with the individual, right? Because it's like, are you saving him or her? Are you saving the player, like, from not wanting to be at the rink, or are you is it self-serving? Is it like, okay, well, my player actually doesn't even like hockey that much, and this is just a reinforcing the fact that they don't like hockey, but I love hockey. So if you're, I need you to be a hockey player. Like, that's my identity. Like, I need
who
you
are we saving.
Like, I need you to be a hockey player for me. Like, this is, and this is where hockey gets crazy, right? And a lot of youth sports now, because I'm seeing it more and more in lacrosse now too, that I've invested this in you. Like, we've invested 35 weeks a winter, every weekend, 19 tournaments, $25,000 a year, private lesson coaches. We've invested in this. I want a return on my investment. And I think what happens is people, like, it's real easy for somebody to say, oh, your son doesn't like chess anymore. All right, well, he used to just play chess on his own, so it doesn't really matter. And the chessboard was $8. So, like, I didn't invest that much in that. Or if my child doesn't like something they've done at school and they weren't inspired by it, I really didn't invest in that. And I think what happens in sports now is, because we're investing in it, we feel like there has to be return from it. And that return isn't always the highest return, right? Sometimes it's a bad investment. Like, did you see your genetic makeup? Your son, that wasn't a good investment. That was a terrible investment. Like, you should have thought about what you were investing in, right? And I think it's what it is. It is what it is. I mean, if you want to invest in fun and love and lifelong learning of the sport and being able to do it. I mean, I skate with a guy who's like 86 years old or something like that, skates and still plays hockey, right? So, like, that person's gotten a pretty good return on his investment. So what's your investment in the sport? And if it's your investment, if you're hurting because your son or daughters, you can't save them from quitting, then you always have to look at it and say, well, are they, like, is this really that bad, or are they just not that good? And then, are you just upset because you spent as much money as the other 3 parents that are getting scouted, and you want to know why your money didn't get your kid scouted? That's just from where I'm seeing every day.
Right. I think that's a fair point. And I do want to kind of bookend that statement, right? Because I haven't heard anybody say this, you're going to, if you go from Adams through, you're going to spend over $100,000 on your kid in this game, easily over that time period, over that 10-year period. What is the payoff from that investment? What is the ROI? Because here's the thing, it has very little to do with hockey, right? Your kid is getting a first class education in adversity. If you play a sport, this isn't even just limited to hockey.
Right.
Your kid is getting a first class education on how to work with other people. Your kid is getting a first class education on how to get up when you get knocked down. There is a reason that, and this is statistically proven, that young boys and girls that play sports through high school are better equipped for the workforce. It's well known. And it's because of the things I just said. They know how to deal with adversity, know how to work with other people. They understand leadership. They understand failure. There's a big difference between the kid who gets to college having lost 3 championship games in his life or her life, and the kid who's never lost anything. Or the kid who gets to college and has only been expected to get 100% on every single test, and the kid who didn't, or had struggled, or had dyslexia. There's a reason why some of the top CEOs, business people in the world, some, not all, have massive learning disabilities because they've had to work harder than everyone else and they've been through that adversity. Right?
Yeah.
So that's the return on your investment, is these life lessons, these life skills, probably some friends along the way that you're not ever going to lose. I mean, the health benefits alone. All right, maybe it's not worth over $100,000, but I'm saying that when you add all these up, it was worth the investment, most likely. If your son or daughter comes out of this game, whenever they stop, could be 8, 18, whatever, and they're a better person because of it, you have done your child a massive service by paying for that hockey or sport or anything, in my belief. Right? Might not feel that way at first. And it's very tough when they're 18 and you haven't seen them as a 28, 38-year-old yet. And how they're part. I mean, Christy, I'm gonna throw this to you. Like, your kids are fantastic people. They are great
they are.
people.
Yeah, they really.
You're so proud of them.
I can say that.
Right.
They're just such good people. They really are. I'm so proud of them.
Right.
I'll share a story. For example, my son's a huge Buffalo Bills fan, and I totally forgot the game was on at 1:00. And I called him and said, my sister and we're going to go pick you up. We're going to go see my mom. My mom's in a nursing home. And there was a little pause, and he goes, "Oh, okay." So I pull up in his driveway. He comes out. He's got his Buffalo Bills garb on. And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I totally forgot. The game was on. I'm so sorry." And he gets in there. He goes, "That's okay. We got to go see grandma. She took care of me. I got to
Wow.
take care of her." Yeah,
Wow.
good people. Good
Christy, I'm going to
kids.
tell you one. That is the most mom thing I think I'm going to hear today. All right. And number 2 is, like, that's correct. Right. That's
Yeah.
totally correct. The prioritization there of the family over the game.
Yeah.
And look, there's been times in my life I wouldn't have acted that way. Don't you know the Stanley Cup is on right now? But
I know exactly right.
but
So,
it's
but
right.
we're raising adults. We're not just raising hockey players and raising kids. We're raising
Right.
adults right now. Just keep that in mind. I also just wanted to mention, we talk about fun as you get into the, more elite teams. And Caitlin mentioned the NHL players still have a lot of fun during practice. And I poked on my daughter's college hockey Twitter account. And it was hilarious. They mic'd up the players and they were asking them, who would you want to be kicked off the island or not be on an island with? And they all named this one player. And they were laughing and having fun. And so, as the kids get older, college level, NHL, they still find time to have fun. So it's not all a grind when you get up in the more elite levels.
Right. Well, look, just rounding this episode out, because I think we had a lot of great points. Chris, I do want to say your daughter is fantastic as well. She's a leader. She believes in people. She leads her teammates. Mike, your kids are probably fantastic as well. Although I'll let you say that. And we all know.
I might just say
kids,
my
yeah.
kids are great.
There you go. Yeah.
Just because I know when they listen to this, I don't want them feeling
Right.
neglected.
Yeah. My dad didn't say anything. No, Mike's kids, he loves you very much. We know
Yes.
that. And look, I'll say this again, just reminding everybody, there's 3 aspects here with what we're talking about. There's the kid approach, the player approach, the parent approach, the coach approach. And you got to analyze all 3 of those things and ask great questions, right? To Mike's point, coaches, we have to make it fun. And if it's going to be super AAA, elite, all-star, showcase, whatever, right? You can still make it fun. You can still make it fun, and you can still be very clear about your expectations. If some of you might not play, here's how we're going to respond to that. right? Or, I think in youth hockey, I don't like hear coaches saying it's not my job to make it fun. Yeah, it is. It is totally your job to make it fun. Okay, that is exactly what your job is.
Crazy. It's so crazy.
Right?
I mean, that when you hear that, and you just said it, and I'm hearing coaches say it.
Yeah, it's
like this is not supposed to be like, and that's kind of my go-to line with my 7-year-olds, that when we work on the ice, I'm like, listen, like I'll see all the little kids out there, I'm like, and they love it, right? You're like, listen, you can't be smiling here. If I see you smiling again, you got to go off the ice, because this is serious business here.
right.
Like, there's no way you should be laughing and having fun. And when you hear, like, if you follow my social media at all, and you hear, like, if you really listen to the videos, and I'm doing with the little kids, and they're doing drills, they're laughing and giggling and
fun.
and these aren't bad. They're having fun. But I'll tell you, I coached a little bit with the Connecticut Whale. These are the elite of the elite. These are pro women's hockey players. I've never seen a group of people have more fun in my life.
Right.
Like, they had so much fun pre-practice, during practice, after practice, in games, on the bench, like having fun. Now, are they always having fun? Is it always, giggling? No, there's a time and a place. But if you're not enjoying and having fun and keeping it light and being, and entertaining each other, then what the hell's the point of being on a team? Like, what's the point of doing what you're doing? Like, so I think it is fun and elite have to go together. They have to go together, because the most elite players have the most fun.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Said.
Yes, sir.
Well said.
I think I'm going to end it on that, guys. I'll say this to the person who wrote that email. We all wish you and your child nothing but the best in the game, and we hope we gave you some great advice today. And for the rest of the audience, we hope we did that as well. If you have a question, if you have a comment, if you have a concern, something you would like us to discuss as a panel here, you can email us, team@ourkidsplayhockey.com. Obviously, that's where we're getting a lot of these from. We have other episodes we're going to do, because we get a lot of comments also on our Facebook group, Our Kids Play Hockey. Make sure you join that if you haven't already. This whole show is built on discussion points, right? While we are your stewards into that realm, this is for the group, right? We made this show because there wasn't a group for us when we were doing this. And I know all three of us learn a lot from each other and enjoy these conversations. So with that said, I want to thank all of you for listening to this episode of Our Kids Play Hockey. Remember, this episode and every other one can be heard wherever you listen to podcasts, or our website, ourkidsplayhockey.com. If you got value, please give us that 5-star review, subscription, whatever you need to do. Share it with your friends, put in your team snaps or wherever your team does it. Say, got this really great episode today, you should listen to it. You know where I'm going with that. So with that said, for Christy Casciano Burns and Mike Benelli, I'm Lee Elias. Have a wonderful, wonderful week, everybody, as you enjoy the depths of hockey. We hope you enjoyed this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. Make sure to like and subscribe right now if you found value wherever you're listening, whether it's a podcast network, a social media network, or our website, ourkidsplayhockey.com. Also, make sure to check out our children's book, When Hockey Stops, at whenhockeystops.com. It's a book that helps children deal with adversity in the game and in life. We're very proud of it. But thanks so much for listening to this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey, and we'll see you on the next episode.